Welcome to Gone to Texas, a podcast about AMC's Preacher. My name is Alex, and I have not read any of Ennis and Dillon's Preacher.
And my name is Nick, and I, of course, have read all of Ennis and Dillon's Preacher.
Today we will be discussing Season 4, Episode 9 of the AMC series titled Overture. While we will not be spoiling any of the comic and by extension any future plotlines of the show, we will be discussing the details of the series through Season 4, Episode 9. So pause this and go catch up before you listen to the rest of the episode. As always, go to mpn.bz/Patreon. Donate even $1 a month to us. We'd be very appreciative of that. Or you can donate $5 a month, and that way you'll get into our Discord. You can chat with us all the time about this show and all of our other shows. And, of course, we're at g2tpodcast.com. Letter G, number 2, letter T, podcast.com. Also, G2T Podcast on Twitter and g2tpodcast@gmail.com. Write us some feedback. We're recording extremely early this week to accommodate some schedules, and thanks to the goodness of AMC Premiere, which allowed us to view the episode pretty early.
Yeah. That
is not an ad for AMC Premiere. Don't buy it.
It was weird when you texted me Friday and you were like, oh, I can't wait to talk about this. And I was like, you watched it already?
I've been watching them on Friday night because they're ready 48 hours ahead of time.
Yeah, that's great.
So, but yes, so we are going to discuss this week's episode. If you haven't, you probably haven't watched it yet, so give it another day if this is downloaded and you started it. But, yeah. Not a lot of feedback because we're recording so early, so that's good. We're going to get right to it.
Maybe we'll have double the feedback next week, next time.
That's entirely possible. It will be the series finale of the show. So
oh, my gosh.
Hopefully people write in with their thoughts.
Everybody write in.
Yes. All right, so for the teaser, Cassidy debates telling Jesse that he and Tulip slept together as Jesse takes a look at his open eye socket. When Jesse exits the bathroom, Tulip springs the fact on Jesse, who appreciates the openness on the matter. Despite Tulip thinking he would lose his shit and word them into toads, Jesse tells them that he loves them both very much no matter what. Cassidy tells Jesse the plan is to get Humperdoo, destroy the Grail, and maybe save the world from a fiery apocalypse. Cut to Humperdoo being pampered at Masada and fawned over by everyone. Humperdoo gets introduced to the top brass of the Grail, and Jesus comes over to give his son a hug as Humperdoo holds cupcakes. The cupcakes smear on Jesus' robes, and everyone laughs at him. A woman walks up to get a picture with Humperdoo, and Jesus thinks it's for a picture of him and Humperdoo, but he realizes that he is mistaken, causing him to glance at Hitler as they both look disappointed. A big production is being organized at Masada to reveal the Messiah, with ballet dancers, mimes, and so much more. Humperdoo gets taken to a dressing room where God sits, waiting for him. Jesse stands outside, using the word to try and bring the sight of killers to him.
It was a long intro.
It was a very long... A lot of these have a lot of stuff in them.
Yeah.
But, no, it was a very long intro. Cool to see the triangle kind of heal, for the most part, a little bit.
Yes.
Before the storm comes, basically.
Yes.
But I liked that Tulip just kind of sprang it on him instead of holding it in. That was nice.
Yeah.
And, Cassidy... This is not quite the moment, so we'll get to that in Act 1. But anyway, that was nice. The big production at Masada was fun.
That was awesome. I loved that.
Tracking, or that one shot kind of going through the whole backstage, seeing everybody preparing and get everything ready.
That was
holding up
phenomenal.
a shoe.
Yep, that was phenomenal.
This episode had some of the most directorial flavor from the director that I feel like any of them have had.
A lot of visual flair going on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is part of the reason why I liked it so much.
I did like that stuff.
Yes.
Disclaimer, before we started recording, I said I didn't really like this episode that much, but directorially I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
For sure.
But mechanically, story-wise, we'll get into it more. I don't think there's a whole lot else to say about the teaser, so we can move right on to Act 1 unless you have any notes. Nothing?
No, I don't think so. I'm glad you hit that point about the showiness of everything behind the scenes was really good.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few other moments in the episode that I think also bring it around, so we'll get to that too. Act 1, Tulip feels good about where things are headed as they leave the Holy Bar and Grail. Cassidy asks Jesse if they're all right, and Jesse says, the one good thing about going to hell and back is you get perspective. Tulip was right. He was gone, but now he's back. Cassidy clarifies the plan is to rescue Humperdoo, and outside the motel, Kamal drags bodies of angels and demons out to a pile while they continue to fight. Cassidy signals them it's time to go as they're how the group plans to get back into Masada. We briefly cut back to It's Morning America, where the hosts get murdered live on air as the broadcast gets interrupted by the Apocalypse 2020 Variety Review. The police chief in Pensacola is watching, and he recognizes Star on screen. Star introduces the variety show as the introduction to the Messiah and the start of the apocalypse. As this happens, Jesse, Cass, and Tulip make their way back into Masada via the Angel and Demon. The Angel and Demon stop Jesse to ask them to be careful with their child, Genesis. Back in Humperdoo's dressing room, God retells the story of Cain and Abel as Featherstone interrupts, so Jesus can present his father with roses and try to win his approval to be the Messiah with his breakdancing routine. God is wholly unimpressed and goes back to his story with Humperdoo when his hairdresser hurts him. God kills the hairdresser and scares Humperdoo, but nobody is allowed to hurt Humperdoo. You were clearly right about the Angel and Demon being their
parents.
Vehicle coming. Not only that, but the vehicle to get into the Grail, as you said last time. Or I mentioned they would be the vehicle to get into the Grail. You mentioned that they were still fighting outside, which was great. And the whole thing about them being the parents of Genesis comes to a very perfunctory, not very important note.
No.
I think.
No one seems surprised by it either.
Nobody's surprised by it. Jesse's kind of like, wait, what? And then walks away. Like, it doesn't mean much in this adaptation, which seems sad.
Yeah. Yes.
So I don't know how much more important it could be, but if and when we read the books, maybe I will. Star's introduction to everything was great. It's fun seeing. It's a completely different character.
It is, yeah.
It's 100% not Hair Star.
No.
But it's fun to see Pip Torrens chewing the scenery in a different way.
Yeah, doing his best Hugh Laurie.
Yes.
That's how I felt the whole time.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah. So it's fun seeing him do that in his shitty wig. I think it's a great wig, actually.
It's shitty, but it looks
great for different.
Yeah, for sure. It suits the mode that they're going for with him.
Absolutely.
Star has now turned into game show host Star, and it's awesome.
I did kind of like Jesse's barb about like, oh hey, it's okay, you guys slept together, but also I'm back now, so it's done.
Yep.
You know, that type of thing. Seemed very. He put him back in his place.
Yeah. Jesse is interesting in this episode with his whole like, I love you both very much no matter what, and he seems toned down in terms of.
He's like almost a little catatonic, it seems.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
He's lost his like.
I think he thinks he's on a suicide mission, kind of.
Yeah.
And he just wants to like everything to be good.
Well, and I feel like what he thought might be true. No, he never wanted God to be an asshole. He didn't want God to have abandoned everybody just for nothing. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he's kind of learned that God is an asshole in this universe and abandoned them for nothing and plans to kill everybody.
Yeah.
He's lost it. You know, what his belief that he had is gone. It's not true. So I think that catatonic state makes a lot of sense.
It does. I'm curious to hear how other people feel about this whole revelation happening in essentially the penultimate episode of the series. Like,
well, and even before that, because it was last episode, really.
Yeah, but at the end, essentially.
Yeah, no.
This is the first time we see him really, the reaction from it.
Yes, and it seemed early. Like I think as we kind of as we explained last week, we were like, I didn't think Jesse and God would be meeting in episode 8. So interesting. Yeah, and then God retelling the Cain and Abel. This is my favorite God costume.
The tailored suit is incredible.
The tailored suit God with like full frizzed out hair. It's the best that his wig and beard and eyebrows have ever looked.
He looks amazing.
It's fantastic. Like I want that Hot Toys. Mark Harlick. Mark Harlick God in tailored suit.
Honestly, that is one of my few notes. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 8 notes from this episode, and usually I have like 30.
Yeah.
And one of them just says, God's tailored suit is so slick.
It's beautiful.
He looks so baller.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
He also looks the most like a villain that he ever has.
Yes, 100%. 100%. It's a very dark suit when you would think God would be in like the white that the Grail would be wearing, maybe.
And it looks like something Loki would wear. Like it's very stylish, but there's no tie. There's the loosened collar. just the wardrobe decisions make him look very villainous, and it's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Him regaling Humperdew with tales of yore.
Yeah.
Like, this is their actual final first meeting, and it's like in the green room backstage.
Yeah.
Kind of like, very weird dynamic, but
it is extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah. All right. Act 2. Tulip, Cassidy, and Jesse fight their way into Masada and notice that it's practically empty. Meanwhile, God manages to accost Cassidy and hide him from the group. God offers Cassidy a mountain of Peruvian heroin, a life with Tulip, and a chance to undo his greatest shame back in Ireland, all if he does one little thing. Starring our friend Tristan from earlier. Meanwhile, in an Australian prison, Eugene plays Semisonic's closing time. I'm just gonna skip all this Eugene shit because I don't think it's important.
You just said it. That's the scene.
That's it.
Cool.
Eugene talks to a priest, and the priest is an asshole
for some reason.
Yep. This fight montage set to Go Tell It on the Mountain, I think, is another moment of like directorial flair that I've missed from the show.
Yes, it felt like something from season 1.
Yes. So that was really great. And it was very comic booky too, the way they kind of paneled it off and like showed split screens and like I thought it was great. It was probably one of the coolest like translations of comic to screen that I've seen.
It was very cool. So
that was fantastic. God and Cassidy's dynamic here. Like I think we've been building here with what's been happening with Cassidy this season, but I feel like I know that you don't necessarily like it because we're fully done with Cassidy potentially being comic book Cassidy.
Yes.
So do you feel as though his turn in this episode puts him in like a... I guess the thing is I'm talking around what comic book Cassidy... what you... embody comic book Cassidy as, but I know that we've kind of talked about Cassidy's uneasy alliance, or like how trustworthy can he really be, and we kind of see that come to a head here.
Yeah, it's weird because I want to say that comic Cassidy is much more complex than TV Cassidy, but that's not entirely true. I think you as the viewer or as the reader, when you're reading the book, your feelings will be much more complex. You'll be taken through more of a roller coaster with him. Whereas in the show, you're pretty much always on his side.
Yeah.
Like, he never really does anything that bad.
Yeah.
And even the bad stuff he does, you're kind of like, well, he's just so endearing, which is integral to the character in both the book and the show. But yeah, it just like, I do like it. I do like that it happened, and I like that it shows... Again, I feel like this kind of harkens back to that conversation we've had about your true nature and that kind of thing. And I think that
for everybody in this episode,
really. And God is really manipulating that aspect and just talking to him like he's a junkie, and even worse when he's like, you're a boy who wants to go home.
He's giving everybody these opportunities to break from that true nature, quote unquote.
Right.
The O'Hare curse, as we see later on.
Yeah.
Cassidy being a junkie, a broken man, basically.
And God is just reinforcing what he believes to be true, that people are not worth saving.
Yeah.
And they're proving him right,
mm-hmm.
which is compelling for sure. Like, don't get me wrong. Everything in this episode, I should like a lot.
Yeah.
I should have walked away from this episode being like, that was really, really awesome.
Yeah.
I'm sure that when I watch it again, or when I think about it in the full context of the show as the show, I'll probably appreciate it a lot more. Like, what they're doing on a writing level is cool. I just think God and his dynamic within the story is so incredibly different than the book that it doesn't sit well with me at first. So like, as I'm watching it, I'm like, I'm uncomfortable with it, just because it's not what I already know.
Yeah.
And what I already know works really, really well. So I have to kind of see it through, you know what I mean? To see how it's all going to pay off.
Here's what really struck me with this. I really, really love God's interaction with the main three in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot there, and it's very, very good. But I'm also so disappointed at how on the nose it is.
Mm.
I feel like, since I know that God does not play as heavily into the books
Okay.
as a character,
yeah,
I feel like they are really resting a lot of it on a very bare and naked observation of what God is doing to these people in the show, rather than kind of overtly suggesting it through the actions and what has kind of befallen his creation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, to me, as much as I love the kind of moment to moment, the bigger picture right now to me doesn't feel as great. And we'll see how they stick the landing, if they stick the landing.
That's the thing, yeah. I feel like it's unfortunate because throughout this whole season, every episode at some point I've been like, well, we got to see how it ends. Like, to ultimately judge it.
It's I like some of these bits and pieces, but I don't know where it's going yet.
And the show definitely seems committed to making God like a full-blown villain.
Yes.
Whereas in the book, he is, but it doesn't commit that hard. It's not like you get
the show is telling you God is bad.
Yes.
The book doesn't. The book
shows you everybody's point of view.
Yeah. So
you can kind of choose who you think is right and who is wrong, but as you're reading the book, you kind of get it. You're like, man, God, we failed God. We didn't live up to the expectation that he put forth, and the freedom that he gives us we are squandering, essentially. Like, I get it. I get why he's like, you know what? I'm over it.
Yeah.
I'm out. And Jesse sometimes feels like the bad guy because he's just hounding this guy, following him around, and God's kind of like, dude, just leave me alone. That's all you got to do is leave me alone.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want. You have free will. But that's not good enough for Jesse.
Yeah.
And it's funny, as you read the book, there are times where God does stuff where you're like, oh, God is bad. And then there's times where you're like, maybe, I don't know. I see where he's coming from, which is, I think, interesting. But again, it's not bad in the show. It's just different.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is a little uncomfortable being like, oh, God is a villain.
Yes.
God is Dr. Doom.
Yeah.
Basically.
Absolutely.
But again, Mark Harlick is just
smashing it.
Just a force, man.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Eugene. Whatever.
Is this another scene? Is this when he gets hit by the car?
No, well, no, we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
Eugene gets hit by a car. He looks like the Wicked Witch of the East underneath.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
That's true.
So that's Eugene this episode.
Maybe this season that might be it.
Yeah. No, I think there's something. He's gonna like. He's gonna turn out to be like another Messiah or so. I don't know what it. Who knows?
Whatever.
Eugene gets to sit on the throne.
Maybe.
Next to Fior or
Maybe.
whatever. Yeah. Act 3, Jesse and Tulip are making their way up Masada in an elevator when the elevator powers down. Jesse realizes God stopped the elevator, as well as the fact that he was unable to use his powers to stop God in the desert. Tulip reveals that she finally read the letter, and she wishes she didn't burn it when she burned down a church. Jesse boosts Tulip out of the elevator and tells her to be careful, but she tells him that she's not scared of God. Featherstone and Star share a moment outside of the review where they acknowledge how good of a team they were, and Star realizes how handsome a woman she is, and he feels her up. Cassidy and God go back and forth about what God wants Cassidy to do, defend Humperdoo until the apocalypse can begin. Cassidy thinks it's one of God's worst ideas to proceed with the apocalypse. He thinks that God just thinks he's weak, but God tells Cassidy that he's just a tired little boy who wants to go home.
Oh, that's where that part is. Okay.
Yeah. Real briefly, I did want to note there were a couple headlines on the It's Morning America. There was climate change is, quote, real, but, quote, not interesting. And Florida man crashes boat into train, kills 9 and lives.
Perfect.
Yeah. Great. But I just remember that. But anyway, Jesse and Tulip in the elevator I liked it a lot.
I liked it too.
It felt like Jesse and Tulip.
Yep.
It felt like a real like reconciliation. Like not even necessarily reconciliation, but like
they're back on the same team.
Cathartic.
For good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really loved her like, well, I burned down a church, and Jesse just kind of smiles at it while also being like, what the hell? And that was very good.
I also liked I'm not afraid of him, and Jesse saying you should be, and her saying I know, right? And then like leaving, like that was great.
Yep. Absolutely. 100% Tulip.
Yep. Pure Tulip.
Featherstone and Star felt like
Star again.
Yeah.
Which is funny. This is the scene where it felt like behind closed doors again, he just back to being Star.
Yes.
Just with hair and a regular eye. But that line, "You're a very handsome woman," that just made me laugh. And then the cut to him just already feeling her up, I was like, this is funny editing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the plate shot of him feeling her up, and it felt like it was probably just a mannequin that was dressed up.
Yeah.
Like it was so weird,
Yeah.
weirdly shot, but it was really funny.
It was.
So, it's really funny that the comedian was Paula Poundstone. I don't know if you ever listened to like Wait, Don't Tell Me on NPR.
Not really.
She's a frequent guest on there, so I do actually find her very funny. But the fact that she's kind of like the butt of the joke of like the female comedian that we brought to the Apocalypse review was Paula Poundstone.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
That was funny too. I forgot how politically incorrect his whole intro of all the acts was, and he said female comedian,
ethnic musicians.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yep. He didn't. It didn't
Very
matter
star.
anymore. The apocalypse is coming. Not that he would have cared anyway in the first place. And then the Cassidy and God stuff. Like I basically wrote out their whole dialogue in my notes because of how much I liked it. It just like one of Cassidy's notes. The first thing he says is like, "You're just mental. You make dogs die when they eat chocolate. You know, Don Jr. testicles. That's terrible design. You know, you've had some bad ideas in the past, but this is just the worst."
Yeah.
Joe Gilgun and Mark Harlick together.
They have good chemistry.
Yeah, we haven't seen it yet before this episode, right? I think.
I don't think so.
So finally, like seeing them together, I think it's cool to see them go back and forth off of each other.
I think obviously we have not stopped and will not stop praising both of these performances.
Yes.
But casting Mark Harlick, I didn't get why. I've always enjoyed it, obviously, see season 1, but you need to have that presence and someone who is able to kind of talk down to somebody that effectively.
Yeah.
And to belittle, to embody the power that is God.
The condescension.
Yeah. And just the utter, like, just, he is like alpha dad.
Yep.
Like, you can't talk back to him. You can't stand up to him. You can't resist. He's going to be right.
Yeah.
He's like, I win after the Tulip confrontation. And like, we still haven't gotten him and Jesse really having a face-to-face conversation. So that's what I'm also waiting for. But it's just, he plays it so well.
Yeah.
And seeing Joe Gilgun once be like reduced to like a whimpering child is pretty intense. And no one feels good seeing that.
Well, and I will say, like, even looking all the way back to season 1, his like first appearance where he's meant to be like the fake stand-in for God.
Yes.
There's this really strange arc on like how well he fits into the character, and it feels like this is the episode where it's like, okay, this is why he's here. This is why he's good.
Yeah,
like it feels the most right that it ever has.
Yeah, which is when you look at the different sort of facets of God he's been able to play. It's pretty wild. Even him in like his biker gear like looks right.
Yep.
And the dog suit and the regular classic God outfit and the fake the angel who was presumably posing as God.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Absolutely. I like that Cassidy's good stuff that humans have done includes Italian food, Paul Newman, and season 2 of The Love Boat.
Yeah, he just says Paul Newman.
Yeah. the humans made Paul Newman happen, so pretty good.
Yeah, Italian food was a good start.
Yep.
It is funny though when you think about like, oh man, I'll think of all the, I mean, whether you're a pessimist or an optimist, you think of all the good stuff humans have done, and he's like struggling to think of it. And at first you're like, yeah, that would be hard in the face of God to immediately be like, these are good things.
Yeah. Italian
food is a pretty awesome start.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Act 4. In the afterglow, Featherstone appears unsatisfied and wants to go again, but Star assures her that after the apocalypse they can. Featherstone doesn't understand, but Star says they adjusted the plan to a more limited apocalypse through Hoover 2, and he realizes that the plans never got sent out. Featherstone asks Star why he would join the Grail if he wasn't a true believer, and Star tells her that it was just for violence, power, and dirty sex. After all, he didn't think she would get into heaven anyway. Featherstone seems quite angry. Hitler consoles a dejected Jesus, but he explains that they're not out of options yet. Jesus tells Hitler that he's not a murderer, but Hitler tells him, I am. Tulip climbs out of the elevator shaft to find God waiting for her. After God smites an accountant that didn't attend the review, he and Tulip sit down in an accounting office, and God tries to goad Tulip into a fight. He bets her that he can set her temper off within 60 seconds, otherwise he will cancel the apocalypse. Tulip takes the bet, and things go well until God brings up Dallas and the loss of her baby. He offers to tell her why he did it, but just before the timer goes up, he tells her he can't even remember the cosmic sweeping reason why he would do something like that. Tulip pulls out her gun and shoots at his head, but it does nothing, and he slaps her aside. He then uses scissors and a garbage pail to collect blood from someone in the room. Jesse finally makes it out of the elevator and hears Cassidy groaning nearby. Cassidy is disemboweled on the floor, trying to tell Jesse that he said no to God. However, he reveals that he eventually said yes. Jesse gets knocked out by God, and God feeds Cassidy some blood before he drags Jesse off. All right. So Featherstone and Star, I like the joke reveal of her wearing all of her clothes still under the bed as Star is completely naked.
Yeah. And what's more, she's doling it out.
Yeah.
She's not a recipient of anything.
No. Yeah. And he like kind of speaks of his like prowess or his, I forget what his actual like, he taps into his, it's not feral, but I can't remember what the
carnal something.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, okay, all right.
I guess I didn't think about it. He's probably been made whole down there as well. He probably doesn't have a faucet anymore.
Yes.
I didn't think about that till just now. Either way.
Yeah.
And we finally get the answer that Star is by no means
what we suspected all along.
Yes.
And I think has been laid pretty bare previously, but to see it get revealed to Featherstone, who has always had the wool over her eyes of like, I'm dedicated to the cause.
She's a true believer.
Yes. Yeah. That was interesting and seems to have turned her to maybe some type of ally for Tulip at least. And I do remember Julianne Emery tweeting something about an interview where she was like, just think of the things that could happen if Tulip and Featherstone got along.
Mm-hmm.
You know, very capable.
It's true.
Capable pair.
Flufferman.
Yes, Flufferman, and what was Tulip's fake identity?
Oh, I don't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember. She said it like 2 episodes ago, I think. But anyway,
it's funny that Featherstone killed Hoover 2 unbeknownst to Star. She just like discovered that he was a mole and executed him and just thought nothing of it. And I love that Star doesn't know exactly what happened. I think he just picked up on the way she was asking questions, like that he was probably like, ugh, something got in the way.
Yeah, I don't know, because she's there on like security detail. Like last they left each other, she was supposed to die, right? She was going to get executed.
Yes.
But now she has taken her seat back by his side. I have a feeling that...
I guess he hasn't seen Hoover 2 in a while. I just feel like he didn't know. He just realized like, okay, something has gone wrong. Like either he hasn't seen Hoover 2, Hoover 2
she didn't know what the plan was, so Hoover 2 must not have succeeded in his...
Exactly. And he just is like... Ugh. All right.
Gotta go to the fax machine. Yeah. Hitler and Jesus. We can talk about that in the next thing, I think. And then Tulip and God.
Oh wait, we didn't. I just wanted to mention how insanely cold God talking to Jesus through the slit in the door was. And just taking the roses.
Feeding the roses through.
Just yanking them through and destroying them.
And then just tossing it aside.
And then just thank you, Jesus. And then when Jesus does the big moment, the big reveal, and God just goes, good, and shuts it. Wow.
Yeah.
Rough.
Cold.
Rough.
Very cold. Jesus has daddy issues.
Yeah. the mother load of all daddy issues.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was rough.
Poor Jesus.
Yeah.
Even at the scene where everyone's laughing at him, and just for something as stupid as getting that, it's so funny that Tom Perdue is so inept at everying.
Yeah.
And everybody
loves him.
Yeah. It's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, and Jesus is being as Jesus as he can in the situation. You know, he's not like mad at Humperdew about it.
No,
He's
at
not
all the time. He's so nice to everybody.
He's not angry that the woman doesn't want the picture. She's asking him to take the picture of that. Like it's it's
even when he runs away with Tulip, he still is like very Christ-like.
Yes.
I mean, he just is like exactly as we expect him to be.
Yeah,
and it's somehow not good enough. It's
in
amazing.
this world, it is the biggest weakness somehow.
So,
that,
well, I mean, I think that's kind of what they're trying to convey is like, you know, here's this guy who laid it all on the line, literally gave us everything, and still there's people that are like, nah.
Yeah. So thanks, Jesus.
Yeah, great, real great.
Tulip and God once again,
fantastic
confrontation.
As I was watching it though, I was like, I know what's going to make her break, and I know what's going to happen, and I know I'm going to be as annoyed with this as I was during Infinity War when there's the exact same moment.
You could have not,
Yes, you could have just thought about the entire fate of the world and just stayed your hand for 20 more seconds.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a storytelling mechanic that I don't really care for.
But Tulip's never really like Tulip. I get what you're saying, but it's not like Tulip really gives a shit about the world cosmically. Like, to her, the whole situation going on is so absurd for literally everybody. Even Star's kind of treating it like, yeah, we're going to be fine afterwards, even though it's the apocalypse, and God clearly wants everybody dead.
Yeah.
You know, like, for Tulip to kind of the person who's like maybe first trauma is her dad getting locked up when she was a child repeatedly, and then she gets to the point where she meets Jesse, they have their life together or whatever, and they're finally going to have a child, and she loses that child. For her to then have her creator treat it as this like throwaway, like, oh, I did this thing that like you might say ruined your life or could have ruined your life, and I thought nothing of it. That fucking blows.
I get it. And I get that it's a human reaction, but at the same time, it's just so extreme a storytelling device that it bothers me.
I get it.
It feels like the Hitler argument, basically.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. No, I totally
and I appreciate on the story level of the show that it just makes God win again. Like it reinforces how he thinks he's right and how arrogant he is. And
she goes back to the.
I'm still watching it, and I'm just like, man.
Yeah.
Okay. Like the scene started, and I was like, I know exactly what's going to happen. I may as well check my phone for a minute. And even though it was good, it was well acted, I was just like, there's no surprise there. And
That's fair. That's fair.
Whatever.
I did almost think he killed her though, when he grabs the scissors and the pail.
I knew he didn't because it just wouldn't make any sense. But I did think of how insane it would have been for him to feed Tulip's blood to Cassidy.
Yeah.
I was like,
I was like, that's fucking sadistic.
And then I kind of wished that it did. I was like, that would be gnarly. That would be some insane. That'd be a crazy step to take.
Yeah.
But obviously, we knew that the other guy, God loves his force push power, and we knew that that dude was still there.
Force push.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that was pretty grotesque too. Cassidy strewn all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's. Joseph is going to have to like kind of chime in here, but I'm wondering about the turning of Cassidy. Like kind of, I want to liken it to, it's not Peter. Is it Peter? The person that
yes, that betrays Jesus.
Yes, that
3 times.
Yes.
I was thinking the same thing.
That's kind of the allegory that I'm thinking of, but I'm guessing there could potentially be something almost a little more applicable, but
Joseph will identify it.
Yeah,
if there is
like that seems to smell of that, and to have God be the one kind of turning Cassidy towards like away from Jesse, I thought was pretty interesting, and to see that he finally actually did it for Humperdew. He did it for Hump.
Yeah,
but all right. Final act here. I'm gonna go all the way up to God and Jesse, and we're gonna take a quick little stop to talk about everything. Eugene attempts to busk in the street. We talked about that already. Tulip awakens and tries to bust out of the accounting office via lockpick, gun, and chair when the door finally opens and an angry Featherstone trains a gun on her. Hitler cocks a Luger and gets ready to leave Jesus in a drunken stupor when Jesus stops him from leaving. Jesus asks why Hitler wants him to be the Messiah, and Hitler reveals that Humperdoo would be a formidable opponent while Jesus would easily be beaten. They proceed to get into a shoving match. Interesting to finally hear Hitler's motivation. I don't really know where Jesse taking the throne of God sits. That still all is very murky because it also feels like it was part of God's plan too.
Yes.
So it probably doesn't matter in the long run. But Jesus and Hitler fighting each other just kind of feels like we're gonna look what we're putting on TV. Hitler and Jesus are gonna duke it out.
What's weird is I kind of liked it.
Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, we're finally treating Hitler like Hitler.
Yeah. The dastardly, like...
Well, yeah, and finally somebody's standing up and pushing Hitler around. I'm like, good. Let's remember that he deserves to get his ass beat, especially by Jesus. It is, I agree with you, it is definitely them being like, herder. Like, at the same time, like, this is a usage of Hitler I can get behind. Yeah. And like when they were sitting on the bed, or like when Jesus was on the bed drinking and talking to him, and Hitler was saying like, I'm a murderer and all that, like, I'll do it. And Jesus being like, oh man, like, wrestling with his desire to be, his father's favorite son, but also to not let Hitler kill Humperdoo.
Yeah.
As this whole conversation was happening, I was like, so mad at season 2. I was like, why? Such a waste. I will go down with the ship of saying season 2 was stupid, because that was so dumb.
Yeah.
The way they introduced Hitler in this season was perfect. Just be like, oh, the Satan's dead. There's someone new is in charge. Boom. Oh, it's Hitler, of course. That would have been a joke that would have worked. He has made total sense in season 4. He makes sense. Mm-hmm. He didn't make any sense prior to this, and I will stand by that. I don't need the final episode to tell you that. Like, there's nothing of that was useful, and I'm so irritated that we're at this point now where the series is ending, and I think of all the good stuff you could have had from the books in place of Eugene and Hitler palling around in hell. Yeah. Ugh. Yeah. Terrible.
What a shame.
TRBL. Terrible. Yeah, it is. But it, this I liked. I liked Jesus finally telling like, no, murder's wrong, and Hitler being like, and Hitler basically calling him a bitch and being like, you know what? The reason I wanted you is because you're weak and I can beat you. Yeah. And then Jesus finally being like, no, I'm going to push you back, even though Jesus is no longer being very, very Jesus, very Christ-like. Yeah.
Hitler's like, what are you going to do? Hug me to death or something like that? Yeah, basically, yeah. And Hitler's like, or Jesus is like, maybe I will.
Is Jesus going to kill Hitler? I'm wondering, like.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Hitler's primal yell that he had at the end there was just, that was great.
Ludicrous. Yeah. Because Hitler's a nerd, man. You look at him, you're like, how is this guy, like, Jesus beat this guy up. Come on.
Yeah.
Give me buff Jesus who knows Kung Fu, because he's been in heaven for 2,000 years.
Just pumping
beat
it
up Hitler.
Yep. All right, and then finally for this episode, God shows Jesse the empty church on Masada grounds and he rests his case on why humanity needs to end. Jesse wonders what God wants from him since he's already taken his parents, his friends, and his eye. God explains that he wants Genesis. It's a stain on both heaven and hell. Jesse wonders if Genesis would work on God, and God goads him into trying, but Jesse can't do it. God tells him it's time to give up Genesis, and Jesse tells him to take it from him, but it appears God can't just take Genesis from him. We hear the saint approach, and Jesse tries to have the saint kill God, but it appears God won over the saint by giving him his daughter's doll. God leaves as the saint approaches Jesse. Yeah, once again, still don't understand why Jesse can't just try and use the word on God, but clearly they're building up to something happening in the finale with that. Interesting to me that God can't just take Genesis back somehow.
Well, like Jesse says, a power to rival your own.
Yeah.
That's part of my dislike of most of God's role in the series stems from that exact dynamic. It doesn't make any sense for God to want to talk to Jesse face to face while he has Genesis, and it also doesn't make sense for God to want to be in the same room as the Saint of Killers. Yeah. So this final scene
stretches
was a little loaded for me. Yes, but at the same time, I like the conversation like the confrontation, I should say, between Jesse and God. I think it was really good, and I think Jesse finally realizing, like, doesn't he say something like "God Almighty, my ass" or something like that?
Yep. God is not the all-powerful God. That
yeah, he can't just extract Genesis. I liked that. I'm still murky on how God was planning on what he thought he was going to do with Genesis.
Yeah.
I also think God doesn't really know how it works, because I don't think Jesse can just eject Genesis from his body.
No. Well, and that's the thing. I talked about how Jesse dying didn't release Genesis, and it kind of marries to that final point that we were talking about of, like, we've talked about previously, and in season 3 it was a big topic that Humperdew needed the right combination of gene editing or whatever to receive Genesis.
Yeah.
And they were testing that. It's almost like Jesse and Genesis do share a special bond for some reason, which is not necessarily something that is present in the books, right? And well, okay, but it's still, it makes sense to me that, like, even in death they weren't separated. Genesis didn't just leave him. It's like Genesis has become a part of Jesse.
Yes.
So,
I do like that he asked why me, and he still
Yes.
doesn't really get the answer.
Well, and God has this shitty grin of only God knows that I just burst out laughing when I watched it. I was like, damn it, that's
God
good.
is basically like Darth Vader and the Emperor rolled into one. It's pretty wild.
It is very, yeah, absolutely. But
the reveal of the saint not there for God was really good.
Yeah.
I liked that.
Yeah. And but the thing is that I feel like the next episode is going to open and it gets undone by something. Like, what's going to happen?
Don't be surprised.
Yeah. So it might be a great cliffhanger to sit on for a week, but, like, really, we'll see what it is. The idea that God would be able to kind of appeal to, God is pulling out all the strings and kind of being like, I'm not just going to sit from afar and watch things happen anymore.
Yeah.
I am in the shit.
Got to take it into my own
manipulating
hands.
people into doing the things that I want them to do to bring about the result that I need. And that's interesting to me. So to see him kind of, like, give that to the saint as, like, I will give you a piece of your daughter if you do this thing for me, or whatever it'll end up being, I think is very interesting.
I'm sure he told him he'd bring his daughter and his wife back, and that was, like, the token of, like, here. That was enough to get... Spoiler alert, I don't think, and this is not coming from the books, but I don't think God's going to keep any of these promises.
No.
I think that's the thing nobody seems to be realizing is, like, yes, he's the ultimate manipulator because he knows what you want.
Yep.
He's God.
Yep.
He's all-knowing. He even says it in this episode.
Yep.
He's going to play on that, and then he doesn't have to hold up anything. He's going to nuke the world anyway.
He's just going to kill everybody.
So the fact that none of these characters get that also bothers me. That
Yeah.
everyone's like, he's just... I mean, it's in every movie when someone's being tortured and they're like, they're lying. They're not going to do what they say they're going to do. Like, we all know that trope. And God is the ultimate example of that. Like, he doesn't have to do anything.
Well, but at the same time...
it bothers me that even the Saint of Killers would appear to be like, okay, deal. Like...
Yeah. They're kind of trying to play it both ways. They're trying to have their cake and eat it too, of, like, God being the creator, it should be in his power to keep all these promises and perform the apocalypse. Like, maybe there's some alternate universe that Cassidy gets transported to where he didn't become a vampire, didn't die in the war, made it through, and he gets to live out his life the way he meant to, and somehow Tulip's there and they get to have each other.
Right.
Like, maybe that's a thing, and maybe there's a world where the saint gets his family back, but in, like, true universe prime or whatever the fuck it is, the apocalypse happens and God moves on to phase 3. Like, I don't know. It's all kind of nebulous, but at the same time, and the world, the point that Bruce brought up in the Discord of, like, does anybody else not think Star actually has his looks back? Like, it feels like there's a joke that's gonna flip the coin. Star's gonna go back to his
disfigured self
body, and
faucet body.
So I feel like that's coming at some point, but we'll see.
I would bet that one of the first scenes of the next episode is the saint approaching Jesse and being like, all right, that guy's full of shit.
Yep.
Now we're together and he's not suspicious. Let's shoot
Let's
this place
fuck 'em
up.
up.
Yeah, exactly. I'm guessing that's what's going to happen.
That makes sense.
Because
yeah.
God does the ultimate super villain that just leaves the room. Like, doesn't
Yeah.
bother to see it
Yep.
through. He's like, all right, you handle this. I'm
Yep.
out of here. I got things to do.
But finally, between Genesis and the Saint of Killers, it's like this is the combination that can be lethal to God.
Right.
He doesn't see it through.
He's arrogant. Like
Yeah.
Jesse even says in this episode.
Yep.
Talking about the way God is.
I will say when Jesse was standing out in like the plains or whatever outside, just trying to beckon the Saint forth, I was like, Saint's coming to Masada and some shit's gonna happen.
I hope so. All bets are off for me at this point as far as like what I
We're gonna get
carry
out of
in
this
from the
finale.
book. Yeah. But oh boy, do I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah, and hopefully it's good. Oh my God, if we get another repeat of the tank battle between the Saint and Sydney, it's not going to be good. Fake smoke on the screen and shadows dropping out like cardboard cutouts and ooh. But maybe that's what they saved all their money for.
I hope
the
so.
end here.
Yeah,
we'll
I
see.
hope they pull out all the
saved it for
stops
the best God wig and tailored suit for Mark Harlick and then,
oh, dude, the shot when Tulip is climbing up in the elevator and he's standing there, he's like, "Come on." The way he swaggers away, I was like, "This dude
or
is
don't."
This
and,
dude
yeah.
is so cool." It was great.
I want to meet that dad.
It's such a Tell me about your dad. Yeah, it's a fantastic performance. He's definitely even the scene where he's talking to Tulip, the blocking and the way it was shot where they're side by side facing each other and she looks so small in the shot next to him because he's a pretty tall guy.
Yeah.
Harlick's got to be like 6'4" or something.
Yeah.
He looks very, very tall.
Look it up on IMDb.
He looks even like he's taller than Joe Gilgan, even the scene where they're talking. And there's probably a little bit of camera trickery there. But just his stature, he's a very tall, lean guy, which again plays really, really well. It's fantastic.
I'm looking up on the back of my Mark Harlick trading card. IMDb says he's 6 foot.
Really, that's it?
But Ruth might be like, what, 5?
Yeah, he looks a lot taller than that. But again, maybe they're just kind of playing.
He's also got...
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe he's got some great platform boots. Or she's 5'3", so she's pretty
tiny.
small. Yeah. But anyway, that's the end of the recap for this week. So... You sound like you don't like it, and I get it. I think.
Was it when I said I don't like it?
I guess you don't like it, no. But it also sounds like you're kind of open to the idea that, like, all right, like you're finally having to come to the terms that this is not the Preacher adaptation that you wanted, but there's still gold to be mined out of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it
This is definitely a knee-jerk reaction because I watched it last night.
Yeah.
And I'm still processing.
Yeah, you need some time to stew over
and
it.
like I said, it's like any adaptation of anything you love, right? Where it deviates and when is naturally, I think, going to cause a little bit of you to kind of be like, if they would just do it the way it works, then I know that we'll all be happy.
Yeah.
And I don't mind deviation, certainly, but I feel like I have to appreciate where it's coming from.
It has to be in the sake of improvement, right?
Well, in the sake of improvement or in the sake of saying something different than the material is saying, but doing it well and having it be something worth saying.
Yeah.
Like, I still don't really like, for example, the finale of Watchmen of the movie.
Yeah.
It's 10 years old at this point, so there's a big change in what the final mechanic is, and while I understand it, I still don't really like it because it's better in the book.
Yeah,
but it's not that it's bad in the movie. It's just like, I don't know,
different for the sake of being different and not necessarily like
better
or
and
improvement or
trying to make, I don't know. It's weird.
Well, we'll see what
on that note, I'm excited for the Watchmen show. I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, I've seen a couple trailers for it, and it looks interesting.
It looks sweet. But anyway,
I'm due for a re-examination of Watchmen anyway. But
it's obviously 100% up to whoever is in charge, whoever the artist or the author or whatever.
Yeah,
they have their reasons, and I once had a lot of faith in this creative team. I just have they have felt absent from this season.
Yeah.
Which also is part of the reason I'm a little bothered. I don't feel their authorship on it anymore. I don't feel their fingerprints on every episode like we used to. So it's a bummer also. In that way, I kind of feel like Jesse and their God. And I'm like, hey,
where are you?
Get your ass back here and explain this. Why did you walk away from it?
Oh, man, it's the most metatextual.
It kind of is.
Interesting. Well, we'll see. We'll see what the finale brings us next week.
I am very excited. I'm also very sad that this is the end of the road.
Yeah.
It's weird. This is the first podcast that we've done that is really feels like it's ending.
Yeah.
It's actually ending. Like with Film Nerds, we kind of chose to stop for a lot of reasons, but it wasn't forced upon us, really.
Yeah.
Alienist was always supposed to just be kind of a one-off experiment, and truthfully, I think the only reason we did it, we tried to fit it into our already really busy lives, was because we were like, okay, it's only a season.
Yeah.
And then, lo and behold, it's coming back.
Season 2, yeah.
Westworld is still ongoing, so we haven't had to make our peace with saying goodbye to that. But this is a weird one because for better, for worse, for all the ups and all the downs, it has been really, really fun. So it will be really sad when it's all over.
We're accomplishing the mission statement of talking about the show, and in the sense of like we open every episode with I haven't read any of it and you've read all of it. Yep. And that is, for better or worse, that is what the show is.
Yeah.
So,
and it's clearly playing out in this episode.
Yes.
Like my burden of all the knowledge is definitely a burden.
Yeah.
I feel like if I would love it if I hadn't read the book. I would probably think this is just fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's been, in a way, like I've said before, it bums me out that this is your first
exposure to it. Yes.
Yeah. But it's just it's just a different journey, that's all.
Well, and that's the thing. There's still a world where I can appreciate the books for what they are, which is nice. And I like that I have that ahead of me because I do want to read it. And I think, for all the times that I've been like, oh, I'm going to read The Dark Tower or I'm going to read The Alienist or whatever it's going to be, this is one where I feel like I'm genuinely extremely curious. I now have an investment into the property.
Sure. Yeah.
So there's it's not just me wanting to get up to speed to be able to match you in discussion or be able to talk about something like The Dark Tower,
Mm-hmm.
So I feel this drive to mine it for what it is and to understand where you're coming from and where you have come from over the season. So you might actually get me to read something.
That would be pretty incredible.
That's how you know the apocalypse has come.
Reading.
Yes, when Alex reads.
Well, we'll have to figure out how, when, who, etc. joins us for whatever we do after. If we're going to record just us for the actual series finale and then do like a whole big, I don't know, we'll have to figure it out.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll figure out what we can do. And, some of it depends on the big things coming for us in the next month and whether or not the timing occurs the way that it's anticipated to occur.
That is very true.
And things like that. So at the very least, I'm hoping we'll do our finale episode next week. I think we should do a season wrap up the week after that with us. Okay. And then depending on where things fall and what we do, maybe we can try to do a capper. Maybe we come back in a little bit of time to just kind of ruminate over everything.
That'd be
Hopefully
cool.
Lance has some time to catch up.
Yeah.
And
David
can join us as well. So I think there's some irons in the fire. 2 weeks from now may not be the complete end of the road, but I think it'll be the fulfillment of our promise of the show,
of our covenant.
Yes. So all that said, once again, g2tpodcast.com. Send us check out the rest of the show there. Send us emails at our Gmail. Talk to us on Twitter, as most people do. The Midwest Podcast Network has other shows about video games, horror movies, FX's The Alienist, and HBO's Westworld. Find out more about these shows as well as how to support the network at MidwestPodcastNetwork.com. Our theme music is the song All In by The Red Thread, and it is being used under a non-commercial Creative Commons license. And that's all for this episode of Gone to Texas. We can't wait to see what the finale of Preacher brings, but until then, go forth and speak the good word.